kick things off, my name is Joe Pelletier. I'm product manager here at All Hands AI, the company behind OpenHands. And we're excited to have Graham Neubig join us today. Graham is the co-founder and chief scientist of All Hands, and one of the original, team folks around the OpenHands project. And we're here to talk to you a little bit of how we build OpenHands with OpenHands. So Graham's going to walk through today with a bunch of examples of how we build OpenHands with OpenHands, and we're excited to kind of share some of that content with you. And then at the end, we'll take some Q&A. So Graham, I'll move it over to you.
Yeah, thanks for the intro, Joe, and thanks everyone for joining. One thing that Joe did not mention in terms of my titles, dubious or not, is that I'm also maybe the largest user of OpenHands on our cloud. So I definitely am one of the people who has used it the most, and much of the work is building OpenHands. A lot of it's other stuff.
Yes, that is very true.
But like one of the things, or here are the things that we're going to talk about today. Number one, what OpenHands is. I assume that maybe most people who are joining today will know this, but I'll go through it briefly if for people who are not aware. Why we use OpenHands in its own development, how we use OpenHands internally, and what we've learned so far. And I'm going to try to mix in a whole bunch of examples, and I'd like to keep it interactive. So, if anybody wants to ask things in the chat, I might not see them immediately, but Joe, if you notice any things that I didn't notice, then please feel free to.
Sure, yeah. I may try to jump in every now and then if we got questions for you to answer
Great.
live.
Sounds good. So first, what is OpenHands? OpenHands is a agent that is tailored specifically to be good at software development, but it is designed to be pretty versatile, so it can help out with various parts of the software development lifecycle. So it's not just, fixing bugs, but we also use it for a lot of other things. And this is the interface that we have, and it shows some of the things that OpenHands is able to do. So it's able to, edit files, create new files, explore your repository, run commands, install new libraries, set up your environment, and various things like this. And it has access to, a terminal, executing Python code in Jupyter, and browsing the web. We have a lot of interfaces into OpenHands. So I demonstrated the GUI that we have here, and this is something that you can use through your computer. You can use that both by downloading the OpenHands open source and running it on your own machine, or through our cloud at app.allhands.dev. And I'll be mostly using the cloud to demonstrate things here because it's more convenient. You can also use it from your phone, and I do this pretty often when I think of something randomly and it bugs me, and I want to learn more about the code base or go in and fix a little thing that I thought of while I was on the run. And you can also do that through the cloud as well. We also relatively recently released a command line tool that you can use locally, and so you can use the agents through a command line, and that's particularly good if you like command line interfaces or if you work on servers where you can't easily spin up a GUI or other things like that. You can also call it through GitHub, and I'll demonstrate how we do that. And you can call it through Slack, and I'll demonstrate how we do that. And we use all of these in kind of different situations, but one of our goals is basically to make it available wherever developers live. And so that's the reason why we have so many interfaces. But the underlying agent under the hood is the same across all of these interfaces. So you can kind of like trade off and use whichever interface you want while still getting basically the same experience with interacting with the agent. So why we use OpenHands to develop OpenHands, for me, long story short, is just it makes me a lot faster. So there's a lot of things that I could do myself, but it's faster to ask the agent to do it. There's also other things that I couldn't do as well myself. So for example, I'm a pretty good backend developer or machine learning developer, so I can kind of, write code for that largely on my own, but I'm not a great front-end developer. I'm also not a great infra developer. So, I kind of need to rely on AI or agents to do that. And so, yeah, actually, maybe I'll jump back. I see we had one question about which LLM model is used by the agent. Is it configurable? When you're running locally, it's completely configurable. We use a library called Light LLM that allows you to switch between any model that you want. We have a list of recommended models that you can find on our docs page. And I will share the place where you can find this. So we have our LLM configuration here, and everybody can see this, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and we have certain recommended models. We just added this Kimi K2 model recently, which is kind of a popular model nowadays. But if you want to go to this site, you can see more about configuring LMs. Cool. So using OpenHands basically allows us to iterate faster by sending in pull requests more quickly, testing edge cases, catching issues early, and when we do catch an issue, going in and fixing it as soon as possible. So basically, it accelerates us wherever we're programming. So I want to go through some of our most common internal use cases, and they're kind of various, and because we use OpenHands for most of the things we do, or at least I use OpenHands for most of the things I do with respect to programming, it's kind of all over the place. But I think the biggest use case that we have is implementing new features. And this is an example of implementing a new feature through our Slack plugin. And you can see Xingyao, one of the other OpenHands developers, basically saw that when the user opened up the OpenHands CLI for the first time, we should allow the user to confirm or reject whether they want to alias OpenHands and OH in their bash profile and display a warning. So this was just an idea that he had, and so he asked via Slack to get it started. I have another example that I did recently, and you can see my Slack here, right? And we have this is just something I did today. I noticed that when we were clicking on the launch button on suggested tasks, it seems like we had a regression where the conversation was started, but the conversation window was not opened. So I asked it to take a look at the code and identify the reason why this might be. So this is kind of like a bug fixing use case. And so when I did this, the first thing is that OpenHands says, I'm on it. You can track my progress here. And then let's see, after 9 minutes of work, it said it identified and fixed the issue with the launch button, and it had added some use cases here. And I realized that I had not asked it to open a pull request. So we have it set up so that it won't open a pull request unless you explicitly ask it to. So I followed up and said, open a PR and share the PR link with me. And so it did that, and it opened the PR. I then clicked through and looked at the files, and I was not happy with what it had done. So I said, the specific thing I wasn't happy with was that it had added a new test file, and I thought it should reuse an existing test file. So I did a little bit of follow-up, and eventually we got to the point where I was happy with it, and I requested review from like the front-end developer on our team, and he did that, and we were able to accept this fix. So overall, this took me about, maybe 10 to 15 minutes of to fix a problem that I noticed, despite the fact that I'm not a very good front-end developer at all, and it would have taken me a lot longer to do it on my own.
One
Um,
other thing, Graham, I'll add about the Slack integration is ever since we shipped it, it's been kind of a game changer for our ability to take feedback from, customers in the community and be able to kind of implement those fixes if they're, either quick fixes or bug fixes and things like that directly from the context of the that someone might have shared in the Slack. And I think that just speeds up the development cycle so much faster now. Like instead of having to go create a ticket first, for example. So I think we're seeing like opportunities where you can just kind of turn around feedback much faster.
Yeah, another way I use it actually is when we get somebody, suggesting something or saying that something's not working, what I will do is I won't ask it to fix it immediately. What I'll do is I'll ask the Slack integration to read the thing that the person said and um, then look at the code base and see if it can identify the place that's wrong and would need to be fixed, create a plan for fixing it, and open an issue. And so that will like open a ticket for us. And then I can go and look at the issue. And if the issue looks good, I can say, okay, now please go fix it. So that will allow us to have like both our like typical issue tracking functionality and like immediately come up with a draft fix for it. Cool. Um, So another thing that we use OpenHands for quite a bit is creating new apps. So for OpenHands, um, we don't like create a new OpenHands all the time, of course. It's a big software project that we've been working on for a year or more. But sometimes we need like apps that surround OpenHands. And this is an example of one that I wanted for a little while. And basically what this is it's a repository monitor. Um, and you can put in um, it, a repository in here. And what this will do when it's done, like pulling all the information, is this will show like open PRs with no reviewers and reviewed non-draft PRs. And what this will allow us to do is this allows us to like click through and organize and triage all of these and send them to appropriate reviewers. And so this was like something that I wanted for a while because it would help us, manage our development process more efficiently. Um, but obviously making something like this would typically take a little while to do. And so I decided that I would try to basically build this tool myself while also recording a video of me doing it. So if you go to our All Hands AI YouTube account, uh, I have a video where I basically um, sorry, I'm getting some ads, but we have a video where I basically demonstrate how I made this in about 30 minutes. And the way I did it specifically was I came up with I created a GitHub repo, and then my first ticket on the GitHub repo was like set up the repo, where I wanted to like create a repository for a JavaScript app with Vite, TypeScript, and React. And then I used our GitHub integration to write like at OpenHands fix this issue. And then it gives a summary of how difficult the issue is and eventually goes in and sends a pull request. Um, And then the next one is I wanted it to implement a pull request service. So basically, I asked it to create a pull request service that monitors two different types of pull requests on a specific GitHub repo, and then um, go through here. And basically, I ended up creating 8 issues in 8 pull requests over the course of maybe 30 minutes or so. And this ended up with us having that repo monitor tool. And if you look at the whole video, it wasn't like I just created the issues and then got them to work immediately. I um, created the pull request, and then sometimes I wasn't like fully happy with the pull request. So I like asked it to merge in the main branch and follow the linting GitHub workflow to make sure everything builds properly. Fix the merge errors, and other things like this, and eventually, got this one to work. So there is like definitely still a little bit of iteration when you work with agents on building something like this, but it's a pretty fast and fun process to build things that you wouldn't be able to build anywhere near as quickly normally. Cool. I have a few questions, I guess.
Yeah, I think
Uh,
there's one question around large code bases. So how does our team review the changes effectively?
Yeah, this is a great question about how we review the changes effectively. Um, I actually have a blog that we shared about a month ago, or maybe almost 2 months ago now, called Vibe Coding Higher Quality Code. And I shared some tricks that we use to try to maintain code quality while still, having high velocity and having large code changes uh, within each PR. Um, the first thing that we do is we make heavy use of static analysis tools. So we have things like type checkers and linters. We code a lot in Python, and Python is not a very like quote unquote safe language. It doesn't have strong type constraints and other things like that. So we make sure that we use MyPy to check typing and use typing like relatively kind of extensively. We also practice test-driven development. So we have basically instructions for OpenHands that ask it to create tests uh, whenever like it is working on something. And this is really useful because we, you know, essentially, if it can't create a test to test the functionality, it's going to be much less likely that it's correct. We use very extensive like continuous integration. So we have tests that run every time. So if we break anything, things will show up in CI. Um, and these three things together with the agent's ability to do things like look at the GitHub CI, see if it's failing, and then go in and fix it, uh, make it much, much easier. So basically, like by the time I actually go in and review the code, I know that it has passed like static analysis. I know that it's passed the tests that it's written for the PR, and I know that it's passed all of the old tests that we still have in our repos. So it's much, much more likely to be, like correct by the time I actually need to lay eyes on it. Um, we also have like repository customization, but one other really big thing that we learned in the process of building OpenHands is that previously we actually had OpenHands open PRs as like the OpenHands agent. But we realized that this didn't give like enough accountability to the person who like used the agent to create the PR. So now we have OpenHands open PRs under the name of the person who like invoked the agent, especially when you use it on the cloud. And this means that like the PR is opened like under your own name, and so you kind of have to have responsibility for it. And we have it open a draft PR. And so the draft PR is like under it remains in draft state until the agent invoker is happy with it, and then we have a second review by another human. And so this allows us to keep like relatively high quality. And yes, there you spend a whole lot of time on code review because now most of the code is written by agents, but like all of these things together make it a little bit less tedious. We've tried a number of like code review automation software things, and we haven't really settled on one that we like. You can also ask OpenHands to review its own code, and it does a pretty good job of that. You can ask like, are there any bad design patterns? Is there any extra code that isn't necessary? And it can do a pretty good job. But
We do have a
so
code review micro agent, the open source.
Yeah, and we have a code review micro agent that you can call that gets called when you run code review too. Um, yeah, actually, maybe I can show one other thing, which is in GitHub, OpenHands works with GitHub, GitLab, and Bitbucket, but we use GitHub, so I'm most familiar with it. But before I started using agents so much to do coding, I never really paid attention to these little buttons up here. They seemed like they're very tiny. You don't really worry about them that much. But now I use them like pretty constantly. And what I use them for is this is like your inbox. And so like when the agent finishes something, it will show up in your inbox. Um, and you can also look at like your assigned pull requests. And these are all the pull requests I'm currently working on and need to like iterate on to like make sure that they get merged. And so when I'm really like working really, closely with OpenHands to get a lot of stuff done, I will basically constantly monitor the assigned pull requests in my inbox to see like what I should be working on next. And this helps me effectively multitask between doing like a whole bunch of different things at once. So that's kind of like been a drastic change in my behavior as a programmer since starting to use agents. Cool. Do we have any other questions in?
There are some random ones, but I think um, we can keep going, and I'll let you know of others too as we keep moving on.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. Um, Yeah, so another thing that we do a lot of is like adding unit tests. So as I mentioned like just before, it's really important to have good test coverage and strong test-driven development when you are working with agents. And sometimes we'll realize that we don't have good enough test coverage. And the good the good thing is that agents are really good at adding tests. The kind of bad thing, or like at least the thing that you need to be very careful about, is they're usually good at adding tests that pass with the current code. And if something is broken, you actually want tests that fail with the current code. And at least, like, this might be a language model dependent thing, but I mostly use Claude Sonnet, and Claude Sonnet really doesn't like to write tests that fail. It really likes to write tests that pass. So if I know there's a bug and I want it to write a failing test, I have to write like make sure that the tests fail in like all caps, and that will like be enough encouragement for the language model to go in and write like a failing test. And then once it can write a failing test demonstrating a bug, it can usually go in and fix it properly. So yeah, definitely test-driven development, like writing the test first and then fixing the bug has been like super useful for me. Another thing is resolving merge conflicts and fixing failing continuous integration tests. So these are things that you really like don't like to do as a programmer. They're kind of tedious, and you don't like you don't want to do them, but you have to do them if you're working on a big project. And so, like right now, you can see here, this PR has a merge conflict. And so in order to get this like actually integrated, I would need to fix this merge conflict. And so for me, that would like mean that I'd have to pull the code. But instead I can just say OpenHands, fix the merge conflict and make sure that the tests still pass. And so I just use speech recognition to like put this in here, and then I can comment. And with the GitHub integration we have, um, soon little eyes pop up to show that it's working on it right now. And then you can go in and like track the progress. And so like if you click on here, like the agent is initializing right now, but it will start working. So yeah, like one other thing I should mention is when I'm in like a quiet office with nobody around me, I use speech recognition all the time just because it like doubles or triples the speed of me entering things. And for my particular favorite, I use Super Whisper, but I've heard a lot of good things about Whisper Flow, which is another kind of speech recognition, which are speech recognition tools. But like definitely using good speech recognition is good because that will like let you recognize programming specific keywords. And I used like the Mac default speech recognition for a while, and it wasn't any good. So I switched over to using Super Whisper.
So Graham, we've got some questions. Let me see if I can find a few that are good. So well, I think there's one question around, is there a roadmap? There is. I'll send a link here in the chat. And there's also a list of good first issues, and it looks like someone may have shared a link for that as well. I think there's also a question about, does OpenHands support DevStrawl, and do we plan to include DevStrawl on OpenHands Cloud? The one thing I'll say first, and I'll move it to Graham, is you'll actually be seeing an announcement soon of how we're looking to support multiple models and provide model choice to the community. There should be an announcement on that either today or tomorrow. But we're also looking at sort of a bring your own LLM option for OpenHands Cloud, which would allow you to kind of use DevStrawl there. Graham, I wonder about any of our experience using DevStrawl right now with OpenHands, and anything you have to share around that.
Yeah, for sure. And basically, we have some recommended models. Maybe the best thing I could show for now is we very recently released this figure. Sorry, this is a little bit pixelated and hard to see, but these are our evaluation results with respect to SWE-bench, and evaluation results with respect to SWE-bench scores. And SWE-bench scores are not everything. Like there are other varieties of tasks that you do as a software engineer that are not completely like covered by SWE-bench, which is a benchmark, a very popular benchmark for like fixing issues on GitHub. But basically, these are the scores that we got on SWE-bench. And Claude Sonnet 4, it has the best scores that we've seen. And especially when you use it for like 500 iterations, which is a very long time. And for a while, Claude Sonnet was just like kind of dominant from the point of view of our benchmarking. Very recently, Kimi K2, an open weights model came out, and it is very good. I was just playing around with it this morning, and it seems like almost as good as Claude Sonnet in terms of quality. And so this is going to be one of our new recommended models. The problem with it, though, is that it's a 1 trillion parameter model, which means that nobody can realistically like self-host it, unless you have a really, really powerful machine, like one with at least, 8 H100s or 8 large GPUs or something like that. So instead, separately from this, we also have DevStrawl Small. And DevStrawl Small is a language model that we collaborated with people at Mistral to build. And it is a 24 billion parameter model, which is something you can reasonably run on a laptop. Like I ran it on my Mac, like my Mac laptop, or you can run it on a reasonable GPU. And it's not quite as good. It definitely seems a little bit less powerful than Claude Sonnet or Kimi, but this is another one that we can recommend. And we have a whole list of like recommended models, most of which show up somewhere on this chart. So if you're like an OpenAI fan, you might want to use O4. If you're a Google fan, you might want to use Gemini 2.5. But basically, we're looking to make this make using all of our recommended models like easier, and so we're hoping to provide a provider through All Hands that we can make it easier for people to use. And as Joe said, we're going to be making an official announcement of this pretty soon.
Awesome. Thanks for addressing that question. We'll let you keep moving on, and I'll see if I can aggregate a few more.
Okay, sounds great. Yeah, these are great questions. Happy to do these questions for as long as we need. Open up the slides again. Cool.
Oh, here's a good one. Actually, it might be coming up to this part of the presentation, but can OpenHands auto test run its results of PRs?
Yes. OpenHands, like actually, this is one of the reasons why you would want to use OpenHands in the first place, because OpenHands can basically set up environments, it can auto test anything that you want. And so just to give an example, let me see if I can go back to the thing where I asked it to resolve the merge conflicts. So if you remember, I asked it to fix the merge conflicts and make sure that the tests still pass. And so what it did is actually, we talked about micro agents, so maybe I can show it like created a micro agent. And this micro agent is specifically for like the GitHub integration. And so it tells how to interact with GitHub and other things like this. But then it said it helped fix the merge conflict. It's checking the status, went in and looked at the Docker and other stuff like this, went in and fixed the problem. And then it also like installed the environment and it ran the tests to make sure that it hadn't broken anything while it was fixing the merge conflict. So this would make it much, much more, robust because it won't just send code that might be broken. It will send code that is like actually passing our GitHub workflows. So yeah, it's a huge advantage of using coding agents. Cool. So yeah, I showed resolving merge conflicts just now. Also fixing bugs. So if we have a bug, we can ask OpenHands to go in and fix it. And the biggest, my biggest like kind of key point when we're fixing bugs is to try to get it to write a test that reproduces the bug first. This is super, super powerful because if it can't write a test that reproduces a bug, it might have a false like conception of what the bug actually is. And so by having it first like localize and reproduce the bug, that makes it a lot more likely to actually send in a good fix. So that's a big thing that I learned in using coding agents. Another thing is like we do pretty rigorous code review in OpenHands. And because of this, we get review comments about things that should be fixed. But if you're a programmer, like usually you don't like doing this. You don't like going back and forth a lot on fixing review comments because you've implemented the code and you want to be done with it. But now you can just say like please address the comment and fix merge conflicts, and then the OpenHands will go in and like fix it, and then like the front end developer working with us said exactly amazing good bot, and that was enough. Another thing that I use it for a lot, I don't see as many people using OpenHands for this, but it's actually really powerful for this sort of thing, is somebody said I would love to see OpenHands support the Claude Max plan because it's cheaper. And so I basically, using our Slack bot, said, read the code from Klein and see what's involved in supporting Claude Max. And so it went in and then it analyzed the code, it analyzed the OpenHands code, and it came up with like an implementation plan for how it could work on this. So um, the, you know, I don't know about the Klein code base, so I wouldn't have known this myself, but I was able to ask, ask OpenHands to do this sort of thing for me. And so recently, when people ask me a question about how something works in the OpenHands code base, I might just respond out of my, own knowledge, or I might ask OpenHands to go and do the research for me. One interesting thing is there's some other tools that allow you to do this. Like there's a tool called DeepWiki by Cognition. And I was originally starting to use DeepWiki myself, but actually I found that OpenHands is just a lot more accurate at answering questions properly, even though it's a little bit slower. So now I almost exclusively rely on OpenHands to answer my questions about our code base. A final thing that we use OpenHands for is writing docs. So one of my favorite examples of this is just like translating our docs into other languages. So, we have a global audience, and so we want to have documentation in the languages of all the people who use OpenHands. And so I asked it to create a Japanese translation, and it went in and did this. We've also used it to localize our interface. So if you go to our settings, you can go to application and you can select a language. I speak Japanese, so like I could pick Japanese, and our app is basically entirely localized into Japanese. It's also entirely localized into Chinese and Arabic and a lot of other languages. And all of this was done basically by OpenHands in one, huge PR that covered like 70 files in our code base and translated things into 13 languages. So yeah, this is like another uh, common thing that we use it for. One problem is I've noticed that docs tend to be hallucinated a lot more. And so we need to be very careful when we implement docs. And we actually have a special micro agent specifically for implementing documentation. And so if you mention documentation or docs or document, it will send these documentation guidelines, including be factual, only include information that can be verified, cite sources, reference the source of the information like code or web pages or official documentation, be clear and concise, use examples to illustrate concepts and other things like this. And this helps us create like higher quality documentation. It's basically just better prompting, but this allows us to do that as well.
Graham, we do have a question around planning, like having the agent plan before writing code. And it sounds like today some folks may ask it to are looking for suggestions on prompts so that OpenHands, kind of creates a plan first before it then starts executing and writing code. Do you have any suggestions on how to do that well today?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the prompts aren't super complicated to make it do this, but there's a few tricks that I use. The biggest trick that I find works really well is to ask it to create a checklist of things that it needs to be doing, and reference specific places in the code base where those things need to be done. And so if I don't have an issue already, like for example, if a user comes up with actually maybe just going back to this example here, if I wanted to turn, like we didn't have an issue for this yet open on our GitHub codebase or GitHub repo, and if I were going to open this on our GitHub repo, what I would say is please create a checklist of all of the things that would need to be done to implement this issue, including appropriate tests to make sure that it works properly, and specifically reference which files in the code base should be modified in order to make this happen. And that should be sufficient for it to come up with like a really detailed issue. And then my next command to it could be, okay, check off all the items in the checklist and create a pull request, and then double check that all the items in the checklist have been checked off. And so this is kind of like me with my like dark tribal knowledge of how to make this happen. But we also want to, we're thinking about good ways to kind of encode this into OpenHands itself. And I believe we even have a system prompt that we have incorporated and we're currently benchmarking. I'm probably not going to be able to find it, so I won't waste time trying to find it. But we have a system prompt that kind of has this like to-do list incorporated into it already, and we're experimenting with it now, and we might turn it on by default once we're sure it's working well for people.
Awesome. We do have a few more questions, and then we could probably go to the design partnerships, unless you have any other content, Graham. But the one other question we've got recently is when we were first building OpenHands, what were some of the building blocks that we created so that it could help, so that OpenHands could be used to further build OpenHands? If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a great question. So right when we first started out, there really like wasn't anything like this. Like OpenHands was one of the first available software engineering agents, and it was the only open source, definitely the only open source one, and like with a good interface. And so we didn't have a whole lot of tooling that we could use, so we built the tooling we needed to make that work. The first thing we built was like a front end that you could interact with. Then we built the agent. Then we built some, benchmarking stuff, and eventually we got to the point where we had like 20% accuracy on SweBench or something like that, which was like very, very low, but still, good enough to sometimes get things right. And then we kind of just iterated from there. Whatever is the most important thing for the time is usually what we're building. Cool. Yeah, I have a few kind of like high level tips, and especially if you're not familiar with using very autonomous coding agents, like even if you're using a coding agent in an IDE like Cursor or Klein or whatever else, it's a little bit of a different beast to have autonomous coding agents that are working in the background. And OpenHands in general is a very good autonomous coding agent. It's one of the best ones out there. It usually works better than the agents that are more interactive for solving full tasks, but still, it's usually a good idea to try to come up with like build an intuition about what things you can ask and what things like maybe it will need a little bit more hand holding. And so the best tasks are things that can be finished in a single pull request, have a clear definition of done, and are easily verified through tests, especially. Annoying chores are good use cases. So if there's things that you just like waste your time and you don't want to be doing them, like they're good things to offload, especially if they're rather straightforward. And then as your intuition grows, you can like write more complex prompts, expand scope and other things like this. And then reviewing the code is important. I mean, I talked about this already, I guess. And
I think this is the design partner
yeah,
slide.
and then maybe Joe can talk a little bit about this.
Cool. So what we'll do is I want to give a little bit of an overview of our design partnership program here with OpenHands, and then we'll move to do some additional Q&A and wrap up. So one thing we wanted to kind of chat about today is also our design partnership program here at with OpenHands, and this is a great opportunity for organizations who are thinking about investing in software engineering agents like OpenHands to evaluate our software and also be able to provide feedback so that that can go into our roadmap. We do have a few different flavors of OpenHands. We obviously have the open source project, which is the core offering, and that we will always continue to invest in. It's great if you're a single user and you want to be able to leverage kind of an AI coding agent. We also have a cloud and SaaS offering, as well as a self-hosted offering, if you're looking to roll this out across multiple teams. And those are what typically kind of businesses and enterprises end up choosing. On the next slide, I wanted to give a little bit more of an overview of our design partner program. So we are actually working with lots of different organizations right now in a very kind of high touch way, where we have shared Slack channels and get their feedback about about their use cases and what they're looking for in an AI coding agent. And that design partner program allows us to kind of build and shape our roadmap around things that most organizations will find important. And so, if this is something that you're interested in, would happy to have a conversation. You can send me an email. I'll put my email here in the chat, and would be happy to kind of connect with you to see if this might be a fit. It's designed to be kind of 90 days, and during that time, there's really no cost, no low commitment, or rather no cost obligation to kind of participate. And then after the 90 days, you can decide if it's the right fit for you going forward. So that's our design partner program, and something that we're excited to be working with lots of companies on right now, and still have some room to add a few more. And with that, I think that is actually the bulk of our presentation today. I know we've got a lot of different kind of questions that have come in so far today, so that's been excellent to kind of get those questions and help answer some of them as we go. Let me there's a couple here around code review actually, and I wanted to kind of maybe open this up. So with code review being kind of a new a main job these days with AI coding agents, it's kind of one of the new bottlenecks in the workflow. What are some ways that OpenHands is looking to make that more easier and efficient? I think that's a great question. It's something that we are also kind of thinking about. But I'd maybe first turn to Graham, see if you have any, if you've gotten any feedback or had any ideas recently around that use case.
Yeah, it's a great question. I can tell about two things that we're trying to do, which are not exactly code review, but they're kind of moving in that general direction. The first one is we basically have a review of the issue description before the agent starts working, and then we have a review of the code after the agent starts working. And these are integrated, or the first one's integrated into our GitHub kind of integration, and then the second one is not integrated yet, but we're looking to do it soon. The pre-review of the issue description, basically what it does is it tries to check if the issue description satisfies a number of criteria of like typically good issue descriptions. So for example, does it have, if it's for a bug, does it have clear reproducibility guidelines for how the bug could be reproduced? Or if it is or does it explain which files should be changed or other things like this? And this will show up in a message from the GitHub resolver. And we're currently working to make this a little bit more structured, so it has like actual recommendations of what you would want to do next to give a higher probability of success for the agents. And then we also have a model that we've been calling our critic model. And what the critic model does is it basically goes in and checks if the code that the agent has created is like, or like the stuff that the agent has done like actually goes in and resolves the issue. And the idea there is like if it the critic model thinks it didn't do a good job, then we can like not send the pull request, or we can prompt the agent to go back and re-review its code and make sure that everything is implemented properly. Um, so However, we have not directly stepped into auto code review. And the reason why we haven't done this is number one, we have the code review micro agent that Joe mentioned earlier. And basically, this is a micro agent with some directions about how to perform code review. And so you can always do like slash code review. And the agent will go in and like do the code review itself and write some comments about what it thinks about the code. And so because OpenHands is very versatile, it can just do this and it does a pretty good job of it. And then separately, there's a whole bunch of code review services, and we're kind of like evaluating them and trying to understand which ones we like the best and which ones work the best with the code that OpenHands generates. And so I saw some recommendations for tools like Cubic. There's other ones like CodeRabbit or Boz or Ellipsis or things like this, but we just haven't looked at them like carefully enough yet to know which one we like the best.
All right, excellent.
I see a couple more. Maybe I could just go through some of the ones that we haven't had a chance to answer yet.
Sure.
So we had a question about in-house benchmarks that we use to test OpenHands in order to improve it more. What do the tests look like? And that's a great question that we actually have an answer for in our blog. It's this building a provably versatile agent blog. And our goal at OpenHands is not to build, an agent that is just good at like solving GitHub issues, but also to build one that is kind of very broadly capable all across the software development lifecycle. And so we created a new benchmark called VersaBench. And VersaBench is a benchmark that includes both SWE-bench style like bug fixing things, but it also includes like multimodal front end development style tasks and tasks across a bunch of different programming languages because we don't want it to just be good at Python. Also, a benchmark for building apps from scratch. Um, a benchmark for smoothing the development process, so including test generation and fixing CI failures. Also, accessing information. So there's a benchmark called Gaia for accessing information from online. And then also just kind of navigating general business infrastructure, like internal websites or other things like this. And so we have a benchmark for that. So we basically are trying to optimize across these 8 benchmarks and then average together. We're calling them VersaBench.
Awesome.
Had another question about configuring OpenHands to continue conceptualizing new features, discover bugs, debug indefinitely. This is a great, like, very interesting use case. Basically, you want it to like just continuously improve your code base. Whether or not it's currently capable of doing that or not, the way I would do it is OpenHands has an API, the Cloud API. And what this allows you to do is this allows you to send in a request. So like let's say you're doing curl, you can basically send an initial user message. So this is like the message that you would send to OpenHands, and then the repository that you would want it to work on. So what I would do is I would set up like a cron job or a Python program that continually sends these requests to OpenHands, like once every 10 minutes or once every 20 minutes based on the current like state of the repo. And then it could go on and continue improving your repo. But that being said, I don't think like any coding agent, OpenHands or otherwise, is good enough to like fully autonomously build a solid software project yet. But it might be a good experiment to see how far you could get with doing something like that.
We probably have time for like 1 or 2 more questions. I see about the Slack channel. We'll look into seeing if that's broken. That link is broken. We'll see if we can fix it. There was a question earlier around like, are we looking into like orchestrating multiple agents? So how about orchestration over multiple open hands agents for independent portions, maybe all with separate steps of available micro agents?
Yep. Yeah, that's a great question. So the first way I do orchestration is just kind of like manual orchestration, and I show how I do this in the video. But basically, like I open up a whole bunch of issues, and then based on the issues, I like set off 5 agents to be working simultaneously and kind of orchestrate them manually. In terms of automatic orchestration, one good way to do this is through the cloud APIs. So if you have like 10 directories in your repo that you want to like call OpenHands on to make sure they're properly documented or something like that, you could just call 10 agents through the API and they could all work kind of simultaneously. And then also one thing that we're doing is part of the like all hands kind of proprietary product is we have a solution for large scale repository refactoring. So like if you want to refactor a repository with like 10 million or a billion lines of code or something like this. We have a thing where we can orchestrate the agents to work on, different parts of that repository all at once. So if that's interesting, feel free to, reach out to me or Joe, and we could discuss a little bit more about that. It's in a stage where we're using it as a prototype ourselves, and we're looking for people who'd like to try it out as well.
And I think that the last question, and then we'll break, is there just around the design partner program. So yeah, so the first 90 days of the design partner program is designed to kind of be no risk, if you will, or low risk in the sense that there's no fees to pay; they're waived. It's really getting your usage of open hands, and in exchange we get feedback that we can use in the roadmap. That's really kind of the main thing that's in it for us. I think typically after the 90 days of the design partner program, if you want to continue using open hands, that's when we can work with you on a commercial license. And with that, I think we're right at the hour nearly. So I want to thank Graham for a great presentation and being very audible ready with some of these questions and answering them on the fly. I learned a lot too today, and hopefully you all learned a lot as well. And we're looking forward to kind of connecting with you offline in the Slack community or through the Open Hands project. And thanks again for joining today's webinar.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks everyone. Great to talk to you.